Good morning, magandang umaga. You're watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Thomas I. Likeness, reporting from our Eagle News studio in the Western Canadian province of Alberta. My city is Edmonton, and I'm here to bring you news and commentary from across the country. And a good Monday morning to you. Hopefully you had a good weekend, all ready to go back to work. Let's check out the weather in Manila this morning. When you look at the sky throughout the day, you're going to see a lot of clouds. AccuWeather forecasting a cloudy day with a high of around 27, real feel of about 28, and only a 25% chance of rain today. Currently it's cloudy, 23 degrees, and it feels like 23. The air quality is fair. We turn now to the weather map in Canada, and our street scene today comes from Beaumaris Lake. That's located actually in the city of Edmonton, in the northeast part of Edmonton. My wife, Shello, shot this while we were out walking this weekend. So let's take a look at the weather map here. On the west coast, Victoria, mostly cloudy and 7. Vancouver, cloudy and 6. Across the mountains to Alberta, Edmonton, mostly cloudy and -8. Mostly cloudy and 6 in Calgary. Saskatchewan, Regina reporting clouds and -6. Cloudy and -11 in Saskatoon. Winnipeg is cloudy and -5. Toronto, mostly cloudy and 0. Ottawa, cloudy and -9. The Atlantic provinces, Fredericton, sunny and +1. Halifax, cloudy and -2. And then St. John's, Newfoundland, they had to put up with some light freezing drizzle and a temperature of -1. At the top of the news, with 2021 barely underway, Canada is mired in the mud of a deepening second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we finished last week here with a record daily high, a record daily number of cases, more than 9,200 on Friday. Deaths on that day, 129. Now, that works out to 1 every 11 minutes. Nearly 4,500 people across the country are in hospital being treated for COVID, more than 800 of them in critical care. The situation in Ontario, so bad, the provincial government has ordered all hospitals to reserve 1/3 of their ICU beds for COVID patients who may be transferred from busier hospitals. So what's next? Rationing? Don't know. Already happening in California. The fear among health officials here is trying to manage those case numbers. Now, let's just look at the province of Ontario. Almost 4,000 new cases. That's today. 61 deaths in that province, 21 of them in seniors' homes. And you remember in the spring, the massive outbreaks in seniors' homes? Remember what the government said? Oh yeah, we'll fix those problems in long-term care. Looks like that's far from being resolved. So what about the Premier? What does Premier Doug Ford think? Well, Ford says the situation is out of control. He adds there'll be more restrictions. He says new modeling numbers will be out on Tuesday, and those new numbers are so bad that Ford says, and these are his words, you'll fall out of your chair. Premier says Ontario's in a desperate situation, and Ford is pleading with people to follow public health measures.
If these basic measures continue to be ignored, the consequences will be more dire. The shutdown won't end at the end of January, and we will have to look at more extreme measures. In the meantime, more people will get sick, our hospitals will become overwhelmed. So please, I'm asking all Ontarians, please stay home and save lives.
One measure that's being kicked around is a curfew. And that's what's been done in the neighboring province of Quebec. 4-week curfew went into effect Saturday. People have to stay home between 8 o'clock at night and 5 in the morning. Fines for violators will be between $1,000 and $6,000. Not everybody happy with the curfew. As a matter of fact, on the first night, which was Saturday, small groups protested in Sherbrooke, Quebec City, and Montreal. Dozens of protesters were ticketed. These people just don't seem to get it. More police officers are patrolling city streets to keep them clear. Case numbers in Quebec today, nearly 2,600 new cases, 39 more deaths. Hospitals in Montreal could soon exceed capacity. To cope, more surgeries and other hospital treatments have been canceled. And if that situation continues, more non-essential treatments will be delayed, prolonging the suffering for many people. You know, to those people who believe this is a hoax, how come hospital beds are filled up with COVID patients? Or maybe maybe they think that's made up too. In BC, though, people have had enough of these protesters. City of Kelowna, the organizer of an anti-mask march that went through the city's downtown, well, he's facing a $2,300 fine. Also in British Columbia, the government extending its lockdown. Eagle News correspondent Jeanette Doiseau has the details.
The Provincial Health Officer of British Columbia has extended the province-wide restrictions on all events and social gatherings until February 5, 2021. As of the announcement of this extension, the province recorded 761 new cases of COVID-19. That makes active cases to 6,349, bringing the provincial total to 56,015 and 970 deaths due to COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic. As the number of new cases in the province and around the globe is increasing, Dr. Bonnie Henry stated the need for the extension for 2 incubation periods. Previously, public health orders were extended for 14 days at a time.
Our public health orders for the next 2 incubation periods are important to ensure we are doing all we can to keep everyone in our province as safe as possible.
The update consists of the guidelines previously published, and some new details have been included in the restrictions. No social gatherings of any size at residences with anyone other than their own household or core bubble. In-person events and community-based gatherings are also suspended. Violators are subject to a fine of $2,000 upwards. Adult and youth indoor and outdoor team sports are put in temporary restrictions to limit the amount of physical and social interactions and travel to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Regarding the mandatory use of face coverings in indoor public spaces, which was effective since November 24, 2020, face shields alone is not allowed as it has an opening below the mouth. There has been some changes as well in the policy with regards to long-term care facilities, including visitations and staffing. At the end, Dr. Bonnie Henry has this message for all British Columbians.
The virus reminds us how interconnected we are, and we have seen this over the past year. This is a global pandemic. A variant that arises in the UK affects us. Surges in Quebec, in Ontario, in our neighbors in Washington State and Alberta affect us. But our pandemic is unique, and we know what we need to do in BC. This is our riskiest time right now. We cannot let our guard down as vaccine is just beginning. Right now, I want everybody to reach out virtually to support each other. We need to protect our seniors and elders even as we're moving along with our immunization program. But it's a time for each of us to commit to our own individual heroism, young and old. And I know we can do this. We can do this because it makes a difference for our family, for our community, and for our province. It's compassion and understanding that we need now to get us through these dark days. We need to continue to be kind to each other. We need to have that compassion, to recognize we don't know everybody's story, and to stay calm. And that's what will keep us safe through this winter.
In British Columbia, Jeanette Doiseau, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
So can it get any worse? Yeah. The first case caused by a new variant of the virus, and this one was first detected in South Africa. The first case of that has been reported in Canada. It was in my province, Alberta. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, says The patient is believed to have been infected while traveling. That patient now in quarantine. And like the variant found in the UK, this one is thought to be more contagious than the original virus. Let's just hope the vaccines will be effective against it. Now, these rising case numbers, this whole situation has caught the attention of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. How is he describing the case numbers? Well, in a word, his word, frightening. Trudeau says that's why he's speeding up the rollout of the vaccine.
Quantities of both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine will scale up in February. Remember that Canada has the most vaccines secured per capita in the world, which means that by September, we will have enough vaccines for every Canadian who wants one.
Now, the Prime Minister is hoping demand for those vaccines is high. Many people have expressed concerns about the vaccines, about their safety, about their effectiveness. Trudeau says he's working with the provinces to encourage people to get immunized.
Premiers and I also discussed ways to combat misinformation. Vaccines are safe and effective, and everyone should be doing their part by getting vaccinated once it's their turn.
One thing that will help the government meet its goals of vaccinating everyone by fall is the pending approval of other vaccines. AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson are two pharmaceutical candidates waiting in the wings. We'll have more news from Canada to come. If you're just joining us, you're watching Eagle News America. I should say Eagle News Mornings from Canada. It's 7:12.
Turuan din natin ang mga bata ng tamang paghugas ng mga kamay. Basain ang kamay ng tubig at lagyan ng sabon. Kuskusin ang iyong mga palad. Gayon din ang pagitan ng mga daliri. Pati na ang likod ng mga palad at daliri. Ganon din ang iyong hinlalaki, kasama ang mga dulo ng iyong mga daliri. Pagkatapos ay iyong palapulsuhan. Gawin ito ng kahit 20 segundo. Pagkatapos ay banlawan ng tubig at patuyuin.
This is Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Thomas I. Likeness. Coming up on 14 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning to you. 23 degrees under cloudy skies in Metro Manila. A couple of international stories I want to tell you about. The first one, the rioting in the American capital last Wednesday. You know, Canadians paid a lot of attention to what was happening on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The Canada-U.S. border is the longest international border in the world between the two countries. And until the pandemic, it was relatively easy to cross from one country to the other. The border's, of course, been closed since March and won't reopen until those case rates, those infection rates drastically drop. Now, given that the U.S. is our closest ally, when we see things like an insurrection incited by a sitting president, we pay attention. You know, we fear the consequences of a civil war. How would that affect our country? We fear the hateful dogma of those who stormed the Capitol and hope that their virulent ideology doesn't infect our country. Commenting on last Wednesday's violence in Washington, D.C., Prime Minister Trudeau says, well, he had harsh words for outgoing President Donald Trump.
Was an assault on democracy by violent rioters, incited by the current president and other politicians. As shocking, deeply disturbing, and frankly saddening as that event remains, we've also seen this week that democracy is resilient in America, our closest ally and neighbor.
Okay, and although, as Trudeau said, that democracy was resilient, although the insurgents were pushed back, Trudeau went on to say, we just cannot take democracy for granted.
democracy is not automatic. It takes work every day. About what a real accomplishment it is to maintain a political system in which the losing side gracefully concedes and in which rival political parties between elections work together for the common good.
We have more Canadian reaction to this story now. This from Eagle News correspondent Ashley Sackmar.
The world saw Wednesday how a mob of pro-Trump supporters besieged the U.S. Capitol Hill in an attempt to stop the official process that would affirm Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Throughout the whole evening and the next day, Canadian politicians posted their condemnation of the insurgents. This is what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had to say. Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States, our closest ally and neighbor. Violence will never succeed in overruling the will of the people. Democracy in the U.S. must be upheld, and it will be. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said that what happened Wednesday was systemic racism in action. Black, brown, and Indigenous people are met with violence and brutality when protesting their human rights. Yesterday, white supremacists attempted to overthrow a democratic election with deadly weapons, incited by the president. The police reaction showcases systemic racism in action. Toronto Mayor John Tory also expressed that this kind of act is unacceptable. Take a listen. Events unfolding in Washington today are both disturbing and appalling. The U.S. Capitol is one of the global centers of democracy. This violence and attempt at insurrection following a free and fair election is unacceptable. Democracy has to prevail, and I'm confident it will prevail. Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie said that there was no patriotism in these acts. What we saw in Washington today was unprecedented and appalling. There was no patriotism in the acts of violence and insurrection, no honor or bravery. Democracy isn't easy. It requires truth and a willingness to put country before self. I hope today is a turning point for America. Official opposition NDP leader Andrea Horwath called on Premier Doug Ford to denounce the Proud Boys, one of the far-right hate groups involved in the insurgents. After the Proud Boys role organizing yesterday's brazen attack on democracy and the rule of law, I am calling on Doug Ford to clearly and unequivocally denounce the Proud Boys. Silence is support. As of Friday morning, the Premier still has not denounced nor posted his comments on the insurgents at Capitol Hill. Singh and Horwath have started an official call and petition to designate Proud Boys as a terrorist organization and to include this group in Canada's counter-terrorism strategy. In Toronto, Ashley Sackmar, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Now, the other international story I wanted to tell you about is the Canadian reaction to the one-year anniversary of the Ukrainian Airlines flight tragedy. You recall that airliner was shot down by Iran shortly after takeoff. 138 passengers aboard that plane had ties to Canada. 13 of them were from my city, Edmonton. I recall the outpouring of grief at a memorial I attended just over a year ago. On Friday at a news conference, Prime Minister Trudeau remembered those who perished in the crash.
To the family members and friends who had planned to pick their loved ones up at the airport, to everyone who was looking forward to seeing your beloved partner, child, or parent, I cannot imagine your pain. Know that you are in our thoughts today. This kind of unthinkable tragedy must never happen again.
The plane was shut down minutes after takeoff from Tehran. Well, now, not a good time to be looking for a job in Canada. The country lost 63,000 jobs in December. The unemployment rate rose 0.1% to 8.6%. Lockdowns because of the pandemic, the main reason. Businesses have been shuttered. Workers have been sent home. Hardest hit, those working part-time, notably youths and those aged 55 or older. The number of self-employed workers has also plunged, and government numbers show 1 in 4 Canadians are still working from home. Well, how good is a Canadian passport? You know, these things are ranked worldwide, and according to the Passport Index, it was developed by Art and Capital. A Canadian passport ranked 18th in the world. That's one place ahead of an American passport. The annual report considers passports from 199 countries, and the ranking is based on the number of countries you can travel to without a lot of red tape, without a visa. Philippine passport, incidentally, 27th place. Oh, who's number 1? In first place, it's Germany. This is disturbing. Police in northwestern Alberta investigating the report of a man wearing a head covering that looks like a Ku Klux Klan hood. He was spotted going into a post office in the town of Grimshaw on Friday. Local resident snapped a picture of it, posted it on social media. Lots of people commenting that racism is rampant in the area, but the mayor of Grimshaw, he's denying his town is a racist community. Opposition leader Rachel Notley tweeted, "This is a vile and disgusting act," adding hatred has no place in the province. The man has not been found. They don't know who he is. It's also disturbing. Child marriage still persists in Canada. This according to a study done by researchers at McGill University in Montreal. They say between 2000, at the turn of the century, and 2018, over 18 years, 3,600 marriage certificates were issued to children, usually girls, under the age of 18. And the university says there have been an increasing number of common law marriages involving children. Actually, they say that practice is a lot more common now. They say common law unions are 20 times more prevalent than the actual marriages. They say these unions often provide less social, legal, and economic protection. Researchers plan to do a follow-up study. They want to examine the mental health consequences of child marriages in Canada. The arrests of 53 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong has been condemned by the foreign ministers of Canada, the United States, Britain, and Australia. In a statement, the 4 countries say they're seriously concerned over the mass arrest. That's under a new security law. It's part of that mounting crackdown by Beijing. Most of those arrested have since been released. Western nations accuse Beijing of using its crackdown to shred the freedoms that were promised under the one country, two systems setup. That was the deal when the former British colony was returned to China. The foreign ministers called on Hong Kong and Beijing to respect rights, respect freedoms in Hong Kong. They say delayed local elections should be held and held in a fair way that includes candidates representing a range of political opinions. Be interesting to see if that comes about. Turning to sports, is America divided? Some NBA players think so. The recent events in the U.S. Capitol, and of course earlier this year in Kenosha, Wisconsin, raised some eyebrows in the league. Players like Jaylen Brown, Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, well, they continue to use their platform to address change in the country. Here's Tenny Samagi with more on the players' thoughts on the pro-Trump riots in Washington, D.C., and the Jacob Blake decision.
Before we get started, we definitely want to speak to some of the things that's been going on in our society. It reminds me of what Dr. Martin Luther King has said, that there is two split different Americas. In one America, you get killed by sleeping in your car, selling cigarettes, or playing in your backyard. And in another America, you get to storm the Capitol, and no tear gas, no massive arrests, none of that. So I think it's obvious. It's 2021. I don't think anything has changed. We want to still acknowledge that. We want to still push for the change that we're looking for. But as of yet, we have not seen it. We want to continue to keep conversations alive and do our part.
Protests and racial injustice continues to inspire NBA players to use their platform to raise awareness and address the need to make a change for the better. We heard from Boston Celtics forward Jaylen Brown speak out on his thoughts on the recent events that occurred in the U.S. Capitol and Kenosha, Wisconsin. Washington Wizards teammates Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook also speak out on the recent events.
I retweeted something that Trump tweeted a few months ago, literally about the guys and people who will vandalize and basically disrespect any federal piece of property in Portland and around the U.S. And those people will face a minimum of 10 years in prison. So we'll see, if he has his foot in his mouth or if that's something that he really truly stands on, because of the people who were invading our capital. They invaded the Capitol. That's unheard of, right? That's unheard of. But, it's just disheartening that this is where we are as a country. But, my biggest thing is bringing more attention to Jacob Blake and his decision in that case and how they decided to not bring any criminal charges against those officers when he was shot 7 times. That's another issue we're still dealing with. So it is just ongoing, but, we continue to fight the good fight. We continue to get in front of these lawmakers and these politicians and continue to lay the hammer down until change is made. But the biggest thing is the P word is patience. Rules and changes aren't going to be had overnight. So we just got to understand what that looks like and what that means. Patience is going to be required from everyone.
To see if those roles were reversed, if those were African Americans and Black people, it would be totally different. Unfortunately, there's so much going on, and there's so many people losing their lives, whether it's through COVID and losing their family members. And sometimes we can't control civilians and what they do. Just control what we do to make change in our society. And that's the biggest thing that we can do now. Unfortunately, we can't control what people do, how they move, but we can control our own actions and figure out how to make the world a better place. It's just crazy, almost like a movie when I see it talking to people, and obviously now being in DC and my family there, it definitely hits a little different for me now.
We'll continue to hear more from players and coaches who will be vocal on the issues regarding police reform, racial injustice, and other issues that are occurring in American society. In New York, Tenny Sumagi, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Some good reporting there, Tenny. And, the Canadian program, that was an American situation. Could that sort of thing happen up here? Could that happen in Canada? You bet. That's why we always have to keep our guard up. No matter where you live, you have to keep your guard up to protect your freedoms. And speak out when you see something that isn't right. That's our program for today. And as always, on behalf of our Canadian news team, I wish you all good health. And let's all fight this pandemic together. My advice to you, as always, is to take care of others, take care of yourselves. Stay home, stay safe, and stay tuned to Eagle News for accurate and balanced coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic and other current affairs. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Stay tuned for Kid Quinto.